In this demo, I'm going to show how to use a few basic elements here to create an animated text card. And I'm going to introduce how to use layer blending modes and the track matte feature in After Effects. So this is what the finished result is going to look something like. And the basic elements that I'm going to use are in this folder here. I have this photograph of Clint Eastwood. I've got another image off the internet of a cracked earth texture. And I've got a stock footage element off of the internet here of a black and white ink overlay, an expanding sort of ink blot. And a lot of stock footage elements, especially if they're intended to be used as mattes, will be black and white like this. So we'll see how to handle that inside of After Effects. So I'm going to start by creating a new project. So I can start from scratch here. I'm going to bring in the three elements. Just drag and drop those across. None of them are layered files, so I don't get any layer options or anything. And I'll go ahead and create a new composition to build in. And I'm going to call this text card. And I'm going to use my preset for, I'm going to go with the smaller size here. I'm going to go with HD TV 1280 by 720, 29.97. So the older, lower resolution HD TV setting there. And I'm just choosing that in the interest of keeping my preview and render times shorter. Duration, 10 seconds, that's fine. I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I'll go ahead and start by adding the elements to the composition. I'll select all three elements, drop them into the composition. So obviously the movie layer is, actually that's the same size as the composition. The cracked earth texture is quite a bit larger, and the Clint Eastwood picture is quite a bit smaller. So I'm going to start with the Clint Eastwood picture. I'm going to choose Layer, Transform, Fit to Comp Height to scale it automatically to match the height of the frame. And then I'm going to bring the ink overlay movie above that so I can see what's going on with it. So I want to use the ink overlay movie to reveal the photograph of Clint Eastwood. And you can see that the ink overlay movie is longer than 10 seconds. So I'm going to use the time stretch column to speed it up. Now, if the time stretch column is not showing in your timeline, you can right click anywhere along this bar here, go to columns and choose stretch to show or hide the time stretch value. Now I'm going to go ahead and crank up the time stretch, and I'm going to bring this down to about 4 seconds. So it's going to be quite a bit faster. I'll go ahead and preview. That looks better, but there's a couple more things I need to do before it's ready to use as a matte. One, I want it to freeze on the last frame of that layer, because now it's only about 4 seconds long. Of course, it's going to disappear after the 4-second mark. So to get it to stay frozen on that last frame, I'm going to select the layer, choose Layer, Time, Enable Time Remapping. Time remapping is a feature that allows us to use keyframes to speed up or slow down or create varispeed effects for a movie or audio layer. Now I'm not going to do anything with those keyframes, but I'm just going to select the out point of the layer and extend it out. And I'm going to hold the Shift key so it snaps to the end of my timeline. And so that way it's going to play from the in point to the out point of the layer, and you can see it's nicely sped up. And then it's going to stay frozen on this last frame through the out point. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to also use scale to scale up this layer so that it's going to reveal a bit more, so that the black area is larger. So I'm going to hold the Shift key, hit S for scale. And before I do anything with that scale, though, I'm going to take the anchor point tool and I'm going to relocate the anchor point kind of into the middle of the black circle here. That way when I do scale it, it'll scale from the center of the circle. So back here at the beginning, I'll click the stopwatch for scale, and then as it expands, I'm going to go a little bit beyond where the freeze frame occurs, and I'm going to increase the scale, maybe something like that. I'm going to put an ease in on that second scale keyframe so it comes to a nice smooth stop. Let's see how that looks. So it expands out, it's scaling up, and it continues to scale beyond the end of the movie layer. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm ready to use this black and white layer as a matte over my photograph layer. And when we use a layer as a matte, that means that it's creating the transparency or creating a clipping mask, as you would call it in Photoshop, for the other layer. In After Effects, the way we do this is using the Track Matte column. If the Track Matte column is not showing on your timeline, you can click this second button from the bottom left corner to show or hide your blending mode and Track Matte options, or you can right-click in that same area that I showed before to go to columns, and then you can go to modes, and that will show or hide that same column with the blending modes and the track mattes. So track mattes is how we can clip one layer into another layer. So here's how it works. We go to our target layer, the Clint Eastwood photo in this case, and either from the pop-up menu or by using the pick whip button to drag to the layer, we choose the layer that we want to use as the matte. Now when we first do that though, a couple little buttons or switches appear just to the right of that track matte pop-up menu. The first button or switch here is the type of matte that we're using the layer as. You have two choices here, alpha matte or Luma matte. The default is alpha matte. That means that it is using the transparency or shape of the matte layer. Well, in this case, my matte layer doesn't have any transparency or shape because it's a black and white image. So I'll click that switch, and that tells it to use the layer as a Luma matte. So instead of using transparency, using the black and white values. Now you can see by default, it's using the black area as the transparent area. I want the opposite. So the next switch is the invert switch. If I click that, it tells it to use the white area as the transparency. So I'll go ahead and preview, see how this looks. So now I've got the photograph clipped into the matte layer using the black area of the matte as the area that it's showing and the white area as the area that is transparent. So that looks pretty cool. So that's how we can use a black and white layer as a Luma matte. Now to continue my text card here, I want to give it a unified color treatment, and to do that I'm going to use a solid color layer and I'm going to use blending modes. So I'll go to my layer menu, choose new, solid, and I'm going to make a solid color card layer that is the composition size, and I'll click the color swatch and pick a color. In this case I'm going to pick kind of an orange color, maybe something like that, and I'll click OK. So that creates a new color card layer at the top of the stack. Now if I put that layer in a blending mode, it will blend with all the underlying layers. So for example, if I go to this mode menu and change it from normal, and normal is just completely opaque, and when you're in the normal mode you can use opacity, of course, to make the layer partially transparent, but it's not blending the color in any special way. All these other blending modes that you see here create interesting color blending or color clipping effects in a variety of different ways. And they're kind of broken into separate groups here without getting too detailed, but some of these groups are grouped together based on what's called a neutral color. So like the darken group, the neutral color is white. So in that group, all of the blending modes will make the white color transparent. The lighten group does the opposite. So all the ones in this group, add, lighten, and screen, black becomes transparent. And in the overlay group, the neutral color is 50% gray. Now, the other ones all have kind of unique effects. Some of them do like clipping effects and stuff, and we'll see those in some other examples. But the best way to experiment and learn about blending modes is just to cycle through the menu and see what kind of effects you get. And an easy way to cycle through the menu so you don't have to keep clicking on that pop-up menu is to use the keyboard shortcut, which is the same as in Photoshop. If you hold the Shift key and then use plus or minus on your main keyboard, it will go forward or backward through that menu. So you can easily cycle through the menu and pick a blending mode that you like or a result that you like. So again, that's the Shift key and then plus or minus to go up or down through that menu. Now in this case, I think I like this one that, I think it was overlay, something like that. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. And if I'm happy with that, I could just leave it as it is. But I want to show that, you can sometimes get more control by, instead of just putting the color at the top and blending it into everything equally underneath, I'll put the color at the bottom. And then I'm going to go to my cracked earth texture and maybe put that in a different blending mode so I have separate control here. Maybe I put that one in the soft light, or maybe I put that one in the overlay. And then the Clint Eastwood photo, maybe I put that one in the soft light. Okay, so you can have separate controls over the different layers by, blending them into the color layer underneath. Now, I like that. Actually, maybe I want to do the hard light one. Except I don't want the cracked earth texture in the photograph of his face. So can I clip the cracked earth texture into that same track matte layer? Of course. If I go to the track matte column and use the pop-up menu or the pick whip to drag to the layer I want to use as the matte, I can do that. And then again, I tell it to use it as a Luma matte and not inverted this time. See, that would be invert. That's not inverted. See, in that way, it's clipping into the same matte, but it's clipping into the opposite side of the matte. So now I've got the cracked earth texture outside of the photo. And I've got separate blending mode control for the two areas. I've got the cracked earth in, or the cracked earth is in overlay mode. I've got the photograph in hard light mode. So this way I've got separate blending control for each of those photographs. Got them clipped into the same matte. End result looks pretty good. All right, I'll load up a quick preview, see how it looks. Nice. Now, just a couple finishing touches here on this demonstration. One, I'm going to have the photograph scale back a little bit just to give it a little additional movement. So I'm going to hit S for scale. I'm going to scale it up a little bit further, set a keyframe at the beginning, and then as this expands out towards the end here, I'm going to scale it back down a bit. So just a very subtle amount of scale. I'll do an ease in on that last keyframe. So just a little secondary movement there creates a little more visual interest. Having the photo scale back just a small amount. And then as a last element here, I'm going to add some text. I'm going to grab my type tool. I'm going to click and make a text layer. I'm going to type in starring Clint Eastwood. Now it's using my last used font settings, so I'll come over here and find the either properties panel or the character panel. I'll grab the character panel. Where is it? Somewhere on my screen. There it is, character. And I know the font that I want to use. It's called Black Oak. It's one of the system fonts. So I'm going to start to type that in. Black Oak. There it is. Double click it. And I'm going to change my font color here just to white and no stroke. And then I'm going to bring my font size down. I'm going to set my paragraph alignment to left alignment. Now this is a pretty wide font, so in my character settings, I'm going to go to the font width, this horizontal width, and I'm going to bring it closer together. Now I think I want to make the word starring a little smaller, so I'll double click it and use the font size to scale that down a little bit. That looks good. And I think I want to maybe nudge this over a space. There we go, just to offset it a little bit. And that looks pretty good. I think I might just open up the tracking value a little bit to spread the letters out a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And then lastly here, an old school technique to do a interesting text reveal that I think would work well in this case is to add what's called a simple choker. And this is actually a good thing to know about when it comes to working with mats, because if you need to expand or contract the edge of something, you can do that by adding Effect, Mat, Simple Choker. Now I'm adding it to the text in this case, and watch what happens when I expand that value. It contracts the edge of the text. Pretty cool. So I'm going to set a keyframe for that. I'm going to crank it all the way up, set a keyframe, hit the U key to reveal my keyframes here so I can slide that keyframe over. And then I'm going to return it to 0, or maybe just a little bit above 0. So my text is just kind of rounded a little bit. The corners are kind of rounded. And I'll go ahead and adjust my placement of my keyframes. Maybe I do an ease in on that one as well. And let's see how that looks. So that reveals the photograph. The photo's scaling back slightly, and then I've got an interesting text reveal on that text layer thanks to the simple choker effect. All right, well, I hope this demo gives you some ideas for how you can use blending modes and track mats to start to build interesting layered composites. This is where After Effects and Photoshop have a lot in common. In the coming lessons, we'll start to explore some other compositing techniques as well, but hopefully this gives you some ideas to get started. And I'll see you in the next video.